Hello and welcome back to episode 11 of the Boxing Social podcast in association with Betfred. My name's Rob Tebbutt. I'm joined today again by Barry Jones, my able co-host. Just before we get started, I would like to say that being a special lockdown episode of the Boxing Social podcast, both myself and my able co-host Barry Jones have had a COVID test today. We've both come back negative, which is positive, which is great. So we are adhering to all of the guidelines that we need to. Just get that out there first of all. Second of all, Barry, how are you, mate? Nice to see you.
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm all good. It's been nice to see some boxing again, wasn't it? It's been a little bit of a void there in my life. That's what I feel. You feel that when you don't see any fights? Because there's been so much, last few years, so many fights going on every week. Now you have like a 2-3 week gap, and you think you're being ripped off or something. Don't you? It's a weird feeling, isn't it? But listen, we're back in the swing of it now, any time now, and that'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, like the conventional quiet months of the boxing calendar, August and January, have become less and less quiet as the years have gone by. But obviously this year and last year, well, not necessarily last year because it was kind of pre-ish pandemic last January, have been a slight change to that. But yeah, no boxing no British boxing this month. I always feel like boxing kind of, as an industry, we lose our mind a little bit when we don't have a time to be occupied. And I think we've probably seen a few examples of that so far in 2021, myself included. But yeah, it will be nice to have some boxing back on these shores because we do miss it. I mean, despite being boxing fans and an ex-world champion fighter, get that in there. Usually introduce him as the ex-WBO super-featherweight champion of the world. It is our lifeblood, and it's not just what we like to do. It's also how we earn a few quid.
Yes, mate. Some more than others. Not you more than me, as I was saying, not the other way. Yeah, so yeah, it'd be good to get back, and that's and obviously when we get crowds back, whenever that'll be, in 2050 or something, that'll be also be great. Yeah, because even though we're watching fights, we're still not getting. You miss the feel. People see it watching on telly is great. You get to see more of the actual fight, to be fair, but you miss that feel when you're ringside, when you with all the people around you, and there's an anticipation of a big fight. It's the biggest buzz for me. Outside the fighting itself, being around that tingling you get, you'll get it. You might not have fought, but then when it's a big fight, all that anticipation about doing your own job, let alone you think you're going to watch something or get to see something that's might be a great fight or a great event is what people use nowadays. Then it's that buzz that you could that's like a drug.
Yeah, it really is. It's a good way of explaining it. I kind of explain that to people all the time. But boxing is an addiction, kind of no matter where you are in it, whether you're a fighter, manager, promoter, media, whatever, you get bit by that bug, and then that's it. I always say to people that, and this is obviously a well said saying really, about that 15 seconds after the referee's given the instructions, the two fighters go back to the corners, and then that you can't quite, if you could just bottle up that 10, 15 seconds, like before a heavyweight title fight when you're in Vegas and seconds out, round one, and just that as they come to meet each other, and you just miss that. We've started off on a very romantic note.
Mad,
on the
podcast. You say that, and I had that feeling with Canelo-Golovkin, the first one. Me and Alex Steeman went over for Box Nation. We pretty much took ourselves over, actually, because they had no money, so I sort of used my partner who works for Virgin Airways, who's a staff travel, to get over to Vegas, and because Box Nation couldn't afford to send me over. Got my own hotel, which they paid me back for, but I picked the cheapest hotel on the strip, and that's how we did it. We did it on a real, but it was the greatest trip. But that sat ringside there, me and Alex sat next to each other, the biggest fight of our career for broadcasting, and I just stood next, looked at Alex, and he looked at me, and I went, "Don't fuck it up." Literally, just before as the bell rang, bing.
It is one of those things as well. Obviously, like when you're away covering a fight and you work all week up to the fight, and it is like the first time that you actually get to relax. I always joke to people that the first time you really get to kind of relax in fight week. As much as I like to ham it up to my mates, I'm going to Vegas, I'm going to be doing this, that, and the other. Really, in reality, you're going to be sat in the media room, or we stay at Hooters, which is now Oyo, whatever it is now. So
my dad's a waitress at Hooters. Figure that one out.
Yeah, great stuff. But now they've rebranded it to Oyo or OYO. It's a bit easier to get through the misses now. So I sort of say, I'm not staying at Hooters anymore. I'm staying at this completely new establishment.
I don't know how cheap that is comparatively. We stay in the park.
Yeah.
MGM Park, which is opposite, which is
that's more expensive.
Right next. What's that? It's more expensive.
More expensive, yeah.
But it's not massively expensive.
No, it's not, and it depends on when you book as well. Like there's no structure to these podcasts anyway. I think people who watch it will understand that. Just kind of a little hat tip to Matt Christie's brilliant piece that he did in Boxing News recently. That was great, fantastic. And obviously Matt is a lot more experienced and well travelled than I am in the industry, but like, looking at that, and it really does make you yearn for it, ache for those kind of, like, I really hope my missus is not watching this, but you really do yearn for those times, and there's nothing quite like covering like a big fight away from home and like investing yourself in the big fight and then finally getting up to it and just taking that seat and going, here we go.
It was lovely to meet your missus over in Vegas with you, mate. Only joking.
Moving swiftly on.
Let's cut that out.
Yeah, no, we stay at it is Hooters. We have to call it what it is. They've still got a Hooters on site in there, so we'll call it what it is. And it's just across the road from the MGM Grand. Isn't it? You just literally take a walk over the road and you're in the MGM Grand. And if anybody ever asks you while you're there, like, because often like you kind of you in the media, especially, you kind of like slip through the cracks and end up speaking to people that you potentially shouldn't really speak to, like executives or people from here, and they go, oh, where are you staying? Are you staying here? And you're in the MGM or whatever, and you go, yeah, just nearby. And they go, where? And you go, where? It sounds like you said Hooters. No, definitely not.
To be honest, so I'm not a fan of the MGM.
Why not?
The hotel itself.
I've never stayed
in the rooms. No, I'm not a fan. So the park is brilliant. I mean, for being close and for cheap. The what's the one across all the Hawaiian? That's not called the Hawaiian.
Yeah. Tropicana.
Yeah. That's I'd rather stay there than stay in the MGM, to be honest. You got to be close.
Yeah.
I stayed in the Castle one with the Golovkin.
Luxor.
No, the Excalibur.
Oh, Excalibur. Yeah, that's next to That's next to.
I just smelled like an ashtray the whole time I was there. I don't smoke. I just stank of smoke all the time.
When was the first time you ever went out to Vegas?
Oh no, it wasn't for a fight. So I've been about 15 times because my partner works at Virgin. So yeah, we go on holiday quite often. But probably about mid-2000s, something like that.
So I expected you to have probably gone out slightly before then.
No, I never did. But Kawasaki was one of my first times, and that'll be my second time I've been there, Kawasaki, and that was just the biggest buzz for me ever, because I knew Joe a little bit, and obviously through the amateurs, and there was a pro when we'll talk sort of a few months apart from each other, and I was a huge fan of his. But to see a Welshman with his name up in lights, I grew up watching Colin Jones, so I was a massive fan, but I was too young to really experience that, and there was no reason for me ever to go to Vegas really, but to get there for that. To see him up in his name up on the billboards and lights, it felt like me. It felt like I was there. Like that, it was one of the proudest moments of my boxing life. Though it wasn't to do with me. It's the weirdest thing, isn't it? But yeah, as a Welshman, as a fan of Joe, as a friend of Joe's, it was just the great experience. The whole trip was great, and I was staying in Excalibur there because I had no money, so that was the only I could afford to stay. And so Joe would phone me, and he had a place in Henderson, but he was staying in, like for fight week, he was staying in a suite in him. So he'd phone me, go, come and see me. So I go, I can see the hotel from where I was. So I go, I'll go and see you now. But that hotel, because they're all massive, it's all distorted at the distance. So I run, I fit as a fiddle. So I run about a mile and a half. I'm not going to get there, and I get to the reception. I go, Joe Kawasaki, and they go, no, you've stayed in a pseudonym. You had a pseudonym. And I go, so I try and I couldn't get hold of him. Then I'd walk out the way back, and he'd phone me again. Go, where are you? I couldn't get in the room. Oh yeah, he said my pseudonym, like I don't know what it was, like Mickey Mouse or something. So I had to run back, see him for 10 minutes. Go, I gotta go now, but I mean, like, thanks.
Yeah, what I always find very interesting is, like, in my head, all I do when I get to Vegas is sit down, eat, and work for the whole week, which isn't massively kind of removed from it. But also, you look at like your stepometer afterwards. You realise when you're walking around Vegas, the amount of miles that you actually rack up. Now, I'm not really a walker or a runner myself generally, so that's one of the good things about being in Vegas, and particularly obviously the climate. But that's another reason why you have to stay close to the MGM.
You do more work than me though. Like I literally I'll do the weigh-in, and I get there like on a Thursday, so you're there long before me. But yeah. I do the weigh-in and the fight, and I'm done. We
get there on pretty much usually a Sunday evening, because like I mean,
fight week, isn't it?
Yeah, and my recent experiences of Las Vegas have obviously been kind of Fury related, or the vast majority have been Fury related. I've been over for Canelo, and not always been Fury, but that's essentially predominantly what it's been. So on the Monday, we'd always end up going to the Top Rank office. And again, another hat tip to Matt Christie's really brilliant piece on Boxing News. If you haven't read it, really do read it, because he'll explain it a lot better than I will, and he's a lot more experienced than I am. But it really, that first day of you getting there, you get off, you're absolutely buzzing to be in Vegas, but you've just got off like it depends on if you have to stop. We usually have to stop because it takes a couple of £100 off the plane. And then you get there and go straight to the Top Rank office, and meeting Fury on fight week is always an interesting thing. On the start of fight week, he's usually quite relaxed. But I mean, I don't really know Tyson outside of kind of doing interviews. So that kind of initial get off the plane, buzz in, right, go to the Top Rank office, see Tyson Fury, get an interview, hopefully that goes well, and then you're kind of away really at the rest of the week. And I mean, we've gone miles off track here, but I think you miss it. You really do
more
miss
now
the
than
buzz.
I did 20 minutes ago.
But anyway, enough of falling over Las Vegas. Let's talk about the boxing that is back before we start talking about the shows that are going to be back over here in Britain in the coming weeks. Caleb Plant, IBF super middleweight champion, boxed this past weekend against Caleb Truax, who once upon a time came over to London and spoiled a certain James DeGale's homecoming. Were you at that fight?
Yes, yeah. It
was at the Copper Box, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was,
I was there.
BT show, but I was working for Radio 5 Live, actually, ironically. It was still Box Nation days. But that was just DeGale underperforming, I felt. But he's still a good fighter, Truax, and difficult. But he wasn't against Plant. Plant's a talent, like, and he got fast hands, fast feet, really fast reactions. His fast twitch fibers are really point. So he can. There's no telling his shots. So he jumps in with left hooks and jumps in with right hands, where you wouldn't get away with it normally, but he can, because there's no telling his work, because his fast twitch fibers are so good that he just explodes into an attack. His jab, works the jab well. He varies with the jab, goes to head and body. So someone like Truax, who's come forward in relatively straight lines, was always going to be really an easy fight. Technically an easy fight, not physically an easy fight, because he's going to keep coming at you, but technically an easy fight. The problem Plant's got is he needs a marquee name of sorts. And the problem he has there is there's not so many marquee names in that division anymore. Every division has a little lull period, and there's one huge name, the biggest, one of the top three names, is not the top name in the sport, but he's got a belt, so that might be of interest of Canelo Alvarez, but that's all he's got, to be fair. And I think he gives, like Billy Joe, I think he can cause him problems and be awkward, and and I don't think Canelo would have it all his own way. But ultimately, you can't see anyone beating him with that weight. And I think the same with Plant. So he was good, and he boxed well and disciplined, and what you'd expect from him. Flashy in combinations, and a good work ethic. But he was up against a guy probably stylistically suited to him. He needs a Lemieux. Not Lemieux anymore, but he needs that sort of style that Billy had, to really look fantastic. Whoa. He looked good, but not a wow. That was a wow for Billy. Even though he was made for him, it was still a wow performance from him. He needs one of those who fits that mold. I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult, and you make a good point there about Canelo, and it's often the way it was the same when Mayweather was active. It's the same now, even still with Manny Pacquiao. When you have kind of a money fighter in a division, it stalls everything. Yeah. And particularly when you've got Canelo, who's kind of gone up and down through the weights over the last 2.5, 3 years. Really, it wasn't that long ago that he was boxing Liam Smith at 154, not 155, 154 pounds. You kind of get everybody at 160 holding on to see if maybe they can move up and get a Canelo fight. Everyone at 175, is he coming back again? And then this is when you get people stalling their careers and waiting for the golden ticket.
Bivens on about moving down to fight Canelo. You understand that? It's the money fight. You move whatever, you'll starve yourself to do it. That's money that, if you get beaten or you can't fight again, but you're financially secure. I understand that, but you need to attract him. That's the thing. And Caleb Plant, at the minute, as good as he is, except for having that title, that's all he's got going for him.
Yeah.
But that final piece in the puzzle for Canelo, if he were to fight Billy Joe Saunders in May, that's talked about, but who knows? If that were to come about, then you think Plant would be the last obvious choice.
Yeah, I mean, Canelo's made no secret of the fact that he wants to become undisputed champion. He's kind of hopped through the weights. Eddie Reynoso, obviously his manager and trainer, says that he sees his optimum weight being 168 pounds. We saw he looked fantastic against Callum Smith before Christmas, so that's definitely the plan for him. But going back to kind of Caleb Plant, I mean, the word showcase fight is kind of become a little bit of a vogue in boxing in recent times. Caleb Plant should have looked $1 million against Caleb Truax. I think he did for the first 3 or 4 rounds, but I think what we've and you've touched upon it there with stylistically, if you've got that bull in a china shop wrecking ball coming towards you, it's gonna fit in with his boxing style. Yeah. But opening a fighter up, going through the gears, not necessarily putting bums on seats by all accounts, and the ratings from Fox were fantastic, which is great for boxing in general, but obviously great for Caleb Plant. But just missed going through the gears. I don't want to say sparring session, but the last few rounds of the fight, it didn't really do a lot for me. And when you're looking at trying to get them big marquee fights, as you know, it is about leaving an impression on that audience. He's
a thinking fighter. You don't get credit for that. So as a thinking fighter, and the corner as well would probably say, listen, you've won this fight already, so don't make any mistakes. If I was his coach, though I'm not a trainer, if I was his coach, then those last few rounds I would be saying, stick to the jab, make him make the fights, because he's got to make the fight to win. So you don't make any silly mistakes. But as a manager, you're going to be going, as a promoter especially, you're going to be, show us something. You want to see something a little bit special. And also, if you want to put yourself in if you want to start the public talking about you fighting a Canelo, then you need that. Or you need to beat someone like a Daniel Jacobs.
Yeah, I think that's a good fight. Daniel Jacobs no longer with Matchroom as well, so that's a good potential fight for Caleb Plant. I know they've spoken about David Benavidez, who of course held the WBC. He's also with Al Heyman and PBC.
But what weight did he go? Was that a catch weight?
I'm told 168 pounds. I spoke to Mauricio O'Sullivan the week that he missed the weight, and he said, "Oh, Rob, we had him enrolled in the weight management program, and it's all fine. And he's assured us he's going to make 168, and then he blew the weight again. So, provided he can kind of make 168 safely, I'd like to see that fight. A fight that I wouldn't like to see, which we saw kind of being drip-fed across social media the other day, was Anthony Dirrell against Caleb Plant. I'm not really sure what that does for anybody at this point. Anthony Dirrell lost resoundingly to David Benavidez not that long ago. I don't think I'd like to see that fight, but kind of on Caleb Plant, I mean, Vinny Feigenbutz, Mike Lee, a 37-year-old Caleb Truax. I mean, Uzcategui was a good win, albeit Uzcategui is still somewhat unproven, but I would like to see something. I think Daniel Jacobs, as you mentioned, is a really interesting fight. And now he's not with Matchroom. He's a free agent. It wouldn't surprise me to see that fight sometime soon. And
that's it. I think then what you're looking at then, you're looking at hopefully to get Andrade moves up super middleweight possibly. But then again, I don't think he's a massive draw either. So, yeah, I think ideally he needs a big name. That's it. Or maybe he just knows Canelo's going to want to come for all the belts, so he just got to mark his time. Because Canelo only got a 2-fight contract with Matchroom, is it?
Yeah, so he's got the 2 fights.
Theoretically, the Yildirim fight and the Billy Joe would open him up to go to another station, theoretically speaking. So this thing, when you're like Canelo, I know we changed to Canelo, but when you're like Canelo, you can go whatever you want, when you want, pretty much. And any company's going to have you because they know the figures are going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and fighters often will get to that, as you've seen throughout the years, will get to that stage where they don't necessarily need a promoter. You kind of look at your Oscar De La Hoyas, your Floyd Mayweather's, Canelo, enormous name. And he's I say playing the field. I know he's done a deal with Eddie, but it's a 2-fight deal, and as you mentioned, he's made no secret of the fact of wanting to box Caleb Plant. So I think we will see that. Before we see that, we're going to see him box Yildirim end of February. What's your thoughts on that? Because look, it's not what I would consider to be a competitive fight, but it has been mandated by the WBC. He is his mandatory challenger. I've seen one side of the argument where people are praising the activity of Canelo Alvarez, which is of course something that we don't always see nowadays. But on the flip side, he is boxing a man who was ironed out by Chris Eubank in 2 rounds. Yeah, well, he's improved dramatically and he's a different fighter, but you can't see that. But it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because he should, the mandatory. What's the point in having a system of getting to a mandatory challenger if you don't get to fight the champion? So whether that champion is a superstar who can unify titles or not, it's irrelevant.
If you get to that, if there's a proper system in place to get to the mandatory, then you deserve your shot. And if he's the mandatory, whatever their system is, whether it's flawed or correct, then he deserves his chance. But what chance does he have? Callum Smith didn't have a chance, so what chance will Yildirim have? It's an easy fight. But also, at the same time, if Canelo will fight 4 times a year and we have to slip a Yildirim in there somewhere, I'll take that every day of the week. Because he's not just the most marketable fighter on his own in the world, possibly, and probably early is. He's one of the best. I mean, technically, he's probably the most all-rounded fighter on the planet. He might not be the best in particular areas about speed or even power or even some sort of physical abilities and stuff, but as an overall fighter, he's the closest you can get to a complete package we have in the sport today. He really is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Something that Callum Smith said. He didn't find him the fastest. He didn't punch the hardest, but what he was very, very intelligent. He knows his way around the ring. He's had 50-something odd fights, I think, at this stage of his career. That may not be accurate, but he is certainly, he combines the two. He's not just the money man. He's also one of the sport's premier fighters,
and he's good to watch. That's the thing. He's good to watch, even if his fights are not like the Callum Smith fight wasn't a barnstormer. But it was enjoyable to watch. Not for a Callum Smith fan, of course, but it was enjoyable to watch because you can see the way he doesn't allow you. He breaks you down. So even when he's not active, he's always makes you busy, makes you work, and then but he is quite active. His rounds are very rarely, nothing happens. There's always punches being thrown. He's not like a lazy fighter, is he? Though he always takes his time. So he's a great fighter. He's a great fighter to learn from as well for young amateurs or aspiring pros or young pros coming up. He's a lovely fighter to learn from. His balance, judgment of distance. How can you be like 5'8"? Well, he's 5'8" if he's that, and beat people to the jab like he does? Because he makes you scared to throw your own. That's what he does.
That's what Callum said. Yeah, Callum Smith said exactly the same thing. He before you know it, he's kind of on you, and then he's away. And he does that lovely thing where he kind of rocks over the front foot and just lulls and draws that lead. He's a brilliant fighter to watch. And just to go back to what you said there about him being active and boxing 4 times a year, the problem that I have with fighters taking a Yildirim-esque fight is when that's one of 2 fights for the year, and I think that is terrible for boxing.
Yeah.
But as you say, if you're going to slip it in, and you go through Canelo's record, and yes, he's boxed pretty much everybody there is to box, but he's also boxed some, let's say, less than stellar names. With all due respect to some of the opponents, Avni Yildirim coming up, Rocky Fielding, with all due respect, is not a Gennady Golovkin. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., take his surname out, and he is certainly not on the same level as those types of fighters. So he does blend it, he does mix it well, and he will fight anybody, and he will go out there and try and take those big challenges.
If he fights 4 times a year, that's great, but it should be one for him, one for us. And by that I mean if he's boxing Yildirim, then say he got $15 million, he might have got 30, I don't know, for boxing. But just say 10. So nice. He gets $10 million for boxing Callum Smith, which is probably massively underpaid for him. But just say he got that, then he only gets 5 for boxing a Yildirim. I think that he's keeping active, but because then that don't go on pay-per-view. That's what I'm trying to say. So one for us. So we're watching 4 times a year, but I don't think it's fair to get, especially in America, to get him to pay $80-$100 4 times a year just to watch him and then other fights on top. That's the difference. If that happens, then I'd rather see him box twice a year because we can't afford to watch him 4 times a year. But if the Yildirim fight's free to air on American TV, it's on
beyond the zone.
Beyond the zone, but you know what I mean. So it's fine there. But if that scenario, it should be one for them, one for us, where you don't get us paid the same money for that, which means you won't have to be, hauled out on a pay-per-view platform. Because the only reason for a pay-per-view platform is obviously for companies to make money, but it's because the boxers want more money.
To make the big fights.
And that's understandable. But if the fights are not big fights, it's just greed, then that's not fair on the fans.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what's going to happen with the Zone, because I know the Zone had trialed, or they'd done a deal with certain cable and network providers for the last Canelo fight, whereby they could kind of, I think the way that it was packaged was to reach people who are used to paying for pay-per-view. I'm not quite sure the dynamics of that. Hopefully somebody from the Zone could explain it. Joe Markowski, if you're watching, which I'm sure you definitely are, please explain it to me. But I think they did like a package whereby I think it was $60 for Canelo versus Callum Smith, but also got you 4 months of free DAZN, which I thought was something new.
And clever, because then you just go, well, I must just subscribe to it. I think that's not, I don't regret that.
And also got you Garcia versus Campbell at the start of the year.
Boxing should have done that, David. This is what maybe they did, but this whatever it is a month. I don't know what the zone is in America a month.
I don't know.
It's not $1.99.
It's not $1.99.
We're having a steal over here at the minute. It'll go up, but it's still it's enjoyable. It's here. But just say it's $20. $20 every month. You can have out his own access. Brilliant. All the programming, all the other stuff we got. Fantastic. Or if you don't want to have that, the one-off costs you $40. No, and you go, that's $40. But it's still cheaper than a pay-per-view in America.
Exactly.
And you just go, well, I'll just subscribe to them and see what we got. If you're half a boxing fan, because you look at the schedule and go, oh, they got this, and that. It's worth it.
Absolutely, and it's also kind of, and it's always the subject of much discussion over here. The kind of the difference between the pay-per-view price point over here and the pay-per-view price point in America. It's obviously worth pointing out that Showtime is, I think, $11 a month. Obviously, Sky subscription is significantly more than that. But obviously, you get other bits and pieces with that, whereby you don't really with Showtime. But kind of the point I'm trying to make is, in America, it's kind of widely accepted. The price is the price. $80 is the price. So if you're coming with a Canelo Alvarez unification fight, you know, the average boxing fan in America who's used to paying $60, $70, $80, $90, some cases even $100 for a pay-per-view will look at a $60 pay-per-view and go, oh, fuck, it's $60. Oh, and they give me 4 months to DAZN. And I think that's kind of a good little halfway house. Whether or not they continue that, whether it worked, I really don't know. But yeah, it's an interesting move.
And you're putting your confidence in your product to go, but once they have our product, they want to keep it. I don't see DAZN as a bad. I think for boxing, coming over here, it's a bad thing, because it's just and something else we have to subscribe to. I still subscribe to Box Nation.
Yes,
and I've been meaning to unsubscribe for about 2 years, to be fair, because they weren't showing no boxing. But no, they are. I know they got a good little schedule coming now again. A couple of good fights we'll talk about. And so you think, well, I'll keep it now. But it's that. I subscribe to Sky Sports. I got BT Sports as well. And I'll buy the pay-per-views, because I don't do that streaming stuff. I just don't do it. So I'd bother buy the pay-per-views. I'll buy it. I'll watch stuff on YouTube like a couple of days later if it's on there. But I won't. No, I don't. I just don't do all that dodgy box stuff. It's just not for me. So I'll pay for it. I pay for everything through the nose. £150, £60 a month. I pay for all my stuff, TV stuff. It's more than I earn a month at the minute. But, so that's where you're at. So so DAZN coming in that for that. No, I'm a boxing fan. I don't get Sky Sports for the football, though I watch the football. I don't get. I watch more basketball than football, ironically. And BT Sports, I don't watch anything on BT Sports except boxing. It's nothing at all. They had the basketball for a while, and I'd watch it for that. I don't watch anything. If the football's on, if it's on, I might watch it. I don't turn over to watch it. And Sky Sports, I'll do the same. But still, I pay for the boxing only. So if I can just get, if it all the boxing went on DAZN, I'd watch DAZN. I wouldn't have Sky Sports or BT Sports. I would just watch DAZN, because all I wanted boxing, and that's where Box Nation was great for me. They had so many fights. I still had Sky Sports, obviously, because they had the Hearn camp, which was the biggest, obviously the biggest postal company in the country right now. But that's the reason why. That was all it was. But Warren was on Box Nation, and they were good enough fights to have. It was brilliant.
Yeah, my laziness, and I'm assuming it's the same for you, of not getting around to cancel my Box Nation subscription has actually paid dividends. There's been a few shows on there in recent times that we've been able to watch, which has been great.
New Year's Eve was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, God, that was brilliant. Like, do you know what? Morning boxing is something that I can really, really get behind. Like, we occasionally get it with, like, when there's shows in Australia as well. I remember watching Manny Pacquiao, Jeff Horn in the morning.
Yeah, but we did one like a Monday morning, I think it was. And I always remember, because my cab driver was an absolute lunatic, and I still remember it so well. Gary Corcoran.
Oh yeah, Gary Corcoran. He boxed Jeff Horn. Yeah,
boxed Jeff Horn. It was like a Wednesday or a Monday morning, something like that. It was. Yeah.
I remember Michael Buffer introduced him as Gary Gallagher.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you got to that one, Mr. Buffer. I'm sure Darren Barker, aka Darren Baker, will have enjoyed that one. Back to Canelo, we've mentioned Billy Joe Saunders. It looks as though, that's the fight. Yeah. Considering he signed a 2-fight deal now with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing. Obviously, the first one being Avni Yildirim. I think it's, we sat here and said that there was no way that Teofimo Lopez would beat Vasyl Lomachenko, but I'm going to go out there.
Different, yeah.
Yeah, slight difference. I'm going to go and put my head out there and say I don't see Avni Yildirim pulling the upset against Canelo. So, in theory, that leads us to Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders, which was actually supposed to happen last Cinco de Mayo, by all accounts. Has your views on that fight changed at all since it could have potentially been last year?
No, I still think Canelo's a huge favourite in almost every department. I can't see how Billy wins, and I'd love to see him win as it goes, but I just can't see it. I think he can be awkward and cause him problems. People will go back to Lara or Trout, southpaws that have caused him trouble. But he is. He's almost like he's not the same person anymore.
No, I remember somebody on that. Sorry to interrupt. I remember somebody on Twitter saying people are talking about the Canelo Alvarez who boxed Erislandy Lara. People are talking about the Canelo Alvarez who boxed Austin Trout. The Canelo Alvarez who boxed Gennady Golovkin the first time around wasn't the same Canelo Alvarez who boxed him in the rematch. So people are kind of going all. I mean, I remember the Erislandy Lara fight. My daughter's name.
I did it for boxing.
Yeah, it's but it's worlds apart. Since then, that's like what, junior middleweight, so super welterweight, and since then he's gone to light heavyweight. He's gone back again.
And
he's
even
gone here and there.
He's twice the fight that he was then. But even that fight, I think I might have had Canelo winning, but it was a close fight. So Lara could have got it. People saying it was a robbery. I don't see it was a massive robbery. I could understand if it's close. No, and I couldn't argue giving it to Lara. Maybe I did give it to Lara.
I scored it for Lara, but
I can't remember. But either way, it wasn't. He didn't wipe the floor with him. So it wasn't if like, oh, just do what he did and you win easy. And also, he's not the same fighter as Lara.
And also, I was going to say, you also underestimate. I think, and I'm not going to detail. I think Erislandy Lara was a 7-time Cuban national amateur champion, former world amateur. I think gold medalist or silver medalist.
But I think Billy's a better fighter as a pro.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
But a boxer. But it's he'll have to be the very, 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 very best. I mean, better than we've ever seen before. The move performance is what we all go back to. But that was December 2017. And there hasn't been no build on that. That's the worry. No, you get that was his coming out party to the world, that fight. And even though you can pick holes in everything, stylistically it was made for him. But he could still punch. He was still dangerous, and you had to take that punch away. And he did that with his feet. He was beautiful, and he did everything right. And he listened to Dom Ingle in the corner, and he kept him calm. And they only give him 1 or 2 instructions to get carried away. And they all kept pulling him back all the time. Stay focused, stay focused. And he was punch perfect. The movement was great. He didn't keep still, but never ran once. And that's the important part. So he always had a good balance, but he could land with decent weighted shots. So he's not a puncher, but he punches with enough power, even at the highest level, to stop you from walking through him. And that's very important. I think he'd do that with Canelo. No, he wouldn't hurt Canelo, but Canelo wouldn't be able to walk right through. Canelo's got also, by the way, he might have the best chin in boxing. Him and Golovkin are juggling which one who has the best. So, yeah, but I still think Canelo would get close to him, would wear him down, the work ethic, the ring smarts and all that, and the movement. He's not as fleet-footed as Billy Joe Saunders, but his footwork is equally as good, but just in a different format.
You're right in what you're saying.
This is ridiculous. I don't understand.
Specifically with regards to the Devil Lemieux performance being being over 3 years ago now, being kind of 3 years and 3 months or what have you ago. I'm just going to run you through the list of opponents since then for Billy Joe Saunders.
Monroe Jr.
No, so that was before.
What?
He's not always right. Charles Adamu, which was of course his comeback fight, I think, which was technically at cruiserweight. Shifat Asufi.
I was there.
Marcelo Esteban Caceres.
Oh, that was a YouTube fight, wasn't it?
Yep, and Martin Murray.
Yeah.
Now, since in the same span of time, Canelo Alvarez has boxed Gennady Golovkin, Rocky Fielding, as we mentioned, Danny Jacobs, Sergey Kovalev, and Callum Smith. And will have also boxed Avni Yildirim at the end of February. So
he's more active.
And a significantly better level of opposition. I mean, you're talking, people can say what they want about Sergey Kovalev, but you're still talking about one of the best light heavyweights of the last 10 to 15 years.
Well, Rocky Fielding is better than Isif.
Shifat Asufi.
I was there and I couldn't say his name then. Can't say his name now. So the comedy and I fight, I think, knock him out, Bill, so I have to say his name. But yeah, he's better than him. And that's probably the easiest fight that he had.
There was, in my opinion, there was some similarities I thought between Caleb Plant's performance against Caleb Truax and Billy Joe against Martin Murray. I thought both of them looked very sharp the first 4 rounds, but again, it got to that kind of, okay, well, I'm winning this fight pretty easily. I think Billy Joe, around 6-7 rounds started to sit down on his shots a little bit more. But I think once it became apparent that Martin was obviously in a similar mold to Caleb Truax as a very experienced, very hard man, wasn't going to go anywhere, then we saw kind of the last 3 or 4 rounds, which was a little bit sparring session-y. So those two performances I felt were actually quite similar.
Actually, them two's a good fight.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think it'd be
I think that's definitely one for the purists.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a great TV fight, but it'd be more entertaining than what you think, to be honest. Because Billy would really make it. I think Plant would have to be on the offensive. So that Billy would really make him work. Billy would stalemate you, to be fair.
That has the potential to be a...
He would stalemate Billy, would just go, you go first, I'll wait for you. That's just your strength.
The Willie Monroe Jr. fight, God, I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. But ultimately, you want to be more excited, you want to sell yourself, and I understand that. But if the best of you won't beat the best of him, then then you trying to reinvent yourself over that 12-week camp to be something slightly different won't beat him. I don't, unless it's something real specific, that flaw in his game that you can do something to exploit that. Apart from that, just saying, you do this style, you have to reinvent your style over 12 weeks. It won't work, because ultimately, when you're under pressure, or this is why we always say about training with your hands up. You always train, even if you don't fight with your hands up, you always train with your hands up, because when you're under pressure, you're tired or you're hurt, you revert back to type muscle memory and what you always do. So if you're hurt and you're knackered and you train all the time with your hands on your waist, you're not going to be able to cover up. I mean, for a sustained amount of time, you're not going to be able to stay in that safe position with your hands high. Canelo, see how he fights, he trains that way. So even when he's tired, his hands are always high. You'll start to drop your hands low. So Billy will, whatever much you train to fight the fighter, you will ultimately, under pressure, tired or hurt or whatever, frustrated, you'll go back to what you do. And Billy goes back to the movement and frustrating you. And you throw one, I'll throw two. You hit me with one, I'll hit you with two. That was the whole his ethos as an amateur, what made him such a phenomenal athlete and what he still is today. Inactivity is the biggest curse in boxing, and he's had it. And I think that Matt Macklin says the word momentum, he gets stick for it. He says it all the time in commentary. But he's right so often, that momentum in it, because he knows, and momentum in a career is so important, and it is, because your peaks are very high, but they're very pointy, they're very steep, so they come down quick. You don't stay in your peak forever. And the fact that Billy sort of got there, 2017, 2018 should have been a big year for him, and it wasn't. Even 2019, now 2021, I don't know. I don't know if he can have that same desire, hunger, sharpness that even might not be good enough to beat Canelo anyway. So yeah. To answer your question, about 20 minutes ago, I think Canelo should be a big favourite. Yeah,
and I think he will go into the fight as a big favourite. I was probably one of the few people who still, even as kind of as recently as probably before we saw the last two fights, we're talking about momentum and kind of recent form and what have you. Billy Joe won the Martin Murray fight very comfortably, but I don't think it was necessarily as emphatic as certainly he would have liked. And when we looked at Canelo Alvarez against Callum Smith, who, depending on what way you look at it, was considered by certainly a considerable amount of people as the number one fighter, 168 pounds, and you see how dominant Canelo was against him. I actually did think
comfortable.
Very, very. He looked like he still had another gear to go in that fight.
He looked like he was in 15 rounds, and he looked like he could have pushed for the stoppage. But listen, Callum Smith's a tough kid, and he might have found some resistance there. Well, he did find some resistance, but he's boxing guys who are naturally much bigger than him. And this is another thing with Billy Joe. He's Canelo's boxing people who are so naturally bigger than him. So why should he take a risk? He's totally dominating Callum Smith, which is a feat in itself, to be fair. Just not because Callum's a good fighter, but just for the disadvantages in height and reach and strength and weight and all the rest of it. Then why take a risk now against a guy who's naturally bigger than you? Because what if he does catch you with something? It can be a massive difference. You're not boxing people your same size now, which you can absorb the punches easier. But Billy's not a natural super middleweight. I don't think. He's filled into the weight better than what I thought. But when Billy turned pro, I thought he was a welterweight all day long. And then light middleweight at best, or super lightweight, super welterweight at best, I thought. But never did I think he was going to be a middleweight. So when he was middleweight, I thought with Billy, I could see all the talent. I remember when he turned pro after about 5-6 fights, and I thought, this kid got talent to be a world champion, but not a middleweight. Never in a million years he's going to be a world champion at middleweight, because he's not big enough. And I didn't mean about power, I just meant physical strength and size. He wasn't big enough. Forget about height. Just didn't look like he had the strength. Proved me wrong. And he was, but now super middleweight again. And again, he's picked up another title, but he hasn't boxed nobody. Martin Murray's world class, but not world class. That Martin Murray wasn't world class.
And is also a middleweight.
Yeah, but exactly, yeah. A big middleweight, but still a middleweight itself. But he's not world class. The Martin Murray he boxed wasn't the Martin Murray who should have been, and Martinez and so on. So he hasn't really boxed anyone world class as super middleweight. So it's a massive step up for him.
We mentioned Callum Smith, and of course we're still waiting to see what kind of comes next for him. I think I saw an interview that he did with Sky Sports a couple of days ago where he kind of alluded to moving up in weight to 175 pounds. Your thoughts on that? Obviously 175 pounds, particularly kind of the last 5 or 6 years, has been one of the deepest and most dangerous divisions in the sport. You see him having success up there at 175 pounds?
I think he's good enough to be in the running, and he could outbox Beterbiev for a long time. He could, but again, it's a strength. See, when you're big for the weight, he should go with the light heavy for sure. He's a massive frame. However easy he made the weight, it's never easy making weight for anyone, and certainly for him. So I think the move up is the right idea, and it probably should long overdue. Who's to know whether he gets a bit more strength with that or a bit more power? I don't know. I don't know about that. But the jab alone when he uses it. My worry is I think Joe Gallagher's a really good trainer. Obviously, his record speaks for itself. He might be our most successful trainer, excluding Ingle. So yes, but that he likes fighters to. You won't agree with this, of course. I think his natural inclination is to fight in the 3/4 range. He likes those physically strong fighters, so he teaches you well, and they're so effective. It's like Callum's brother Liam. How good is he in close? Paul was good fighting close, even though he was a boxer, even Stephen to an extent. And Scott Quigg, all them sort of fighters, and Callum should be more longer than he is. So sometimes he's 6'4" with a long reach and boxes like he's 6 foot. Or 5'10" sometimes, but he does it so well. So but he doesn't need to do that. I think at light heavyweight he needs to be longer than ever. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one,
But sorry, but Joe Smith Jr. boxing
Maxim Vlasov.
No, I know that's a hard fight, but you would give him a good chance against Joe Smith Jr. I think Joe Smith wins that fight, by the way.
Yeah,
but I think you give him a good chance. It'd be a hard fight because he's a big lad who can punch himself. But stylistically and boxing ability, I think he could win that.
Yeah, Joe Smith's one of the what in my opinion, like we recently did a feature with him. One of our editorial did a great feature with him, and he's kind of one of the real sort of likable success stories in boxing. He sort of started off on like the circuit scene as a club fighter, with all respect to club fighters, and he kind of came up through the hard way, and obviously he'll always be remembered as the man who knocked Bernard Hopkins out of the ring in his last fight. But he's really he's kept going and kept going. He doesn't do anything spectacular, Joe Smith, but what he can do is punch really hard with that right hand, and that will take you, to a certain level.
And
at
he's
least.
tough.
Yeah,
that's that. I think that
even the Bivol fight when Bivol beat him and outboxed him, in and out, and he never really looked in trouble. He kept going right until the end of that fight.
And that toughness thing's a massively. You can't teach toughness. I mean, you can improve on your toughness because you get used to certain things, but you got it. You haven't. So, but it's underrated. It's an underrated skill. So you just think, he takes a good shot. But it's not always taking the shots that makes you tough. It's other things. When you're tired and having to go through that wall, and all sorts of things make you tough. And he has all that. So he always keep throwing. He's one of those guys who just keep throwing till he's out. So he's always dangerous. So yeah, but again, style. I think Callum could box rings around him.
Sort of staying with Callum, it is interesting to see kind of where he goes. He won the World Boxing Super Series, which by all accounts, was very, very lucrative. Particularly the first season around was very, very lucrative. He's then gone and boxed Canelo Alvarez, and albeit come up short, it's still the biggest fight that you can get in the sport. And Callum had spoken about retirement for a couple of years, and it's kind of interesting to see if and when or if he does decide to take that jump to 175 pounds, and what the carrot is at the end of the string, so to speak, at that weight, when you've achieved what Callum has in his career, become world champion, won the Ali Trophy, and what have you. what kind of gets you into it? Do you really want to go up there and fight Artur Beterbiev? He's a scary, beastly of a man. You know, it's
it depends what you've got. If money's your god, then you're always searching for the next big fight.
Which I don't know Callum really, any personal way, but I don't think it's a money thing.
You would tend to think that Callum always felt he was going to be a world champion or thereabouts, and always felt he was going to win some good money because he was at a decent weight. But that's World Super Series money, if that's what we're hearing, what it was just different gear altogether.
Yeah, it really was, yeah.
If you got what I was told, then that box is ticked. That goes to it and say, there's never enough. You always want more, but that box is ticked. You haven't got to worry about his financial future. So it's all about ambition, which is great because you're boxing then. If you can do that, there's not worry about the money anymore. Though, you let other people do your deals now about how much you get, extra you get, and all the rest of it. You just want fights. Then you're going back to what you used to be when you first turned pro, when you were amateur, just for the desire for it. If you still, most people, once they've earned enough money, they haven't got that desire anymore to achieve. Now, when I won my world title, if I had 5 defences in my contract, which was a good money then back then, which makes me a rich man, not like that rich, but rich. I don't want to fight anymore. I've won a world title. That was my box ticked. Well, I never thought I'd get there. There's the box I even had. There was a new box that was ticked. I got that. I've overachieved. I've got what I want. I just get as much money as I can, as quick as I can. I'm gone. That's my legacy. I got my family got money. I'm happy with that. And I was being a world champion. I've achieved my ambition. My ambition wasn't to be a legend or anything like that. But Callum's maybe was different. So now he's going back to what he used to be. So he's training for pure just ambition and the love of the sport. So if that's the case, he'll be a better fighter than he was, prior to the World Super Series when he was trying to get to the final purely for the money. Because he told you what you're going to get, I guess that's the thing. So that's the carrot is the financial reward. No, the carrot is two-weight world champion. They put you ahead. Even in this generation, still, when it's easier than ever to win a world title, it still puts you in a different bracket to most other champions. And I think that's what I feel he has. They're a fighting family. We all go on about the Smith fighting family, but it's a phenomenal thing they've done.
Yeah, really,
they've all boxed for world titles. You know what I mean? And 2 of them won. One was unlucky, and one who I thought was the most talented for a while, Stephen, just fell short. But just to have that is unbelievable. And so he was always in it for the glory, and the money's there, so he's in for the glory again. You can pick a world title. Joe Smith Jr. is a fight he can win. Beterbiev's a guy who can totally outbox, but can he keep him away? We'll see what he's like. I think let's see what he's like at light heavy. Listen, we got a plethora of light heavyweights in this country who will argue that he has to get past them first.
Yeah, you'd kind of like to see. I mean, Sullivan Barrera is always the sacrificial lamb thrown out 175 pounds by every promoter. We're looking for somebody like Sullivan Barrera. He's actually moved down to 168 pounds now, so it's not going to be him anymore. Which, by the way, at 37, 38 years of age, I think is slightly, maybe
wouldn't. Dangerous now, isn't it?
Yeah, particularly for him, he's been in some really tough fights. I don't know if you'd have been there when he boxed. Jesse Hart on a Fury undercard in Vegas.
Yeah.
And he took a lot of shots in that fight. And, he's always been very teaked. I don't know how we've got to talk about Sullivan Barrera, but anyway. He's always been, very, very tough, very durable, also defensively cute enough to not always get tagged. But that fight, he was hurt a lot in that fight by Jesse Hart. And I just don't know whether or not moving down in weight at that point of your career and at that age is necessary. I can't remember it ever being a good thing, or ever seeing a fighter moving down in weight in their late 30s.
No, it's not good, is it? You never know. Maybe he'll say I've been living the wrong life and now I'm living the right life, and that's usually what it is. But yeah, you can't reinvent the wheel, can you? You are where you are, and yeah. But listen, they're just trying to cash in. Just you worry about their mental state when they retire. I've done a big thing about this recently, but you worry about that, and physically how they're going to cope with it as well and stuff. With the damage to the brain, because the end of your career is probably more damage than it is early in your career, of course. But he's his old man, and but that's where boxing needs. And it's another conversation. That's where boxing needs a universal FIFA type thing. I know FIFA's corrupt, maybe, but FIFA type thing where. There's just one universal governing body looking after fighters. Because the British Box Board look after you. Just get a license over somewhere else and do what you want to do. Box until you're 75, like the Danny Williams. People go on way too long. So
Yeah,
anyway.
we just did an interview with a professional boxers affiliation who are looking.
Yes, I've spoken to him actually.
Who are looking to do some great stuff. So if if you're watching this and want to look into the work that the professional boxers affiliation are looking to get up and running, two very young guys who have a massive interest in the sport and want to look after fighters. I know you've just done a recent piece on it. Who after retirement, because boxing is one of those sports. We've spoken about it before. You retire and it's very much the next one. Even when you're active, you win a fight and it's always the next one. What's next? And your achievements and what you've done sometimes can kind of get pushed to one side. And I can't imagine how difficult that potentially is for a fighter. Right, before we wrap up our impromptu 168-pound discussion, I just wanted to discuss Canelo Smith, the arm injury. Now, that's something that piqued a lot of people's interest. Probably not the most interesting thing to end the segment on, but I just wanted to know if anything like that or anything similar had ever happened to you in your career with kind of being targeted in an unfamiliar area of your body, I guess. I mean, I know that you always hear kind of the stories of the amateurs. It's very much kind of a Cuban thing to punch the lead hip and like sort of, to slow your movements and what have you. But was that ever anything that you did? Did anybody ever do it to you?
Remember the night I won the world title, I got punched in the collarbone, which is obviously a scoring target, but it bruised up automatically, like straight away. And there was a problem because I'd like to throw, when I'd throw like 4 bursts of right punches, but it'd be enough to get away and I'd score. And I couldn't do it. So that was the box. I know I saw this was much worse than mine, Callum Smith. I know what I was like then, the box the rest of the fight, not being able to have that rhythm in your work. So like my biggest night of my fight of my life, and I couldn't show what I was done in the gym for the last like 3 weeks. And that was disappointing for that. I haven't had that, but I've been bit, kissed, and my bum grabbed. Amateur most of this, but I'm pro. Yeah. I boxed my first senior amateur fight, official senior amateur fight. I boxed a couple of 20-year-olds when I was 15, which shouldn't have been allowed. I won, by the way, and I boxed a kid I boxed a kid called David J, right, a Welsh kid, living in Wales, and then I was 16. I boxed him on a club show, and he got to the final of the Welsh Senior Championships the year before, so he was okay, pretty decent, and that was my first fight. But I dropped him. I think I dropped him twice with body shots. Like a good body puncher back in the amateur days. I dropped him twice with a body shot, left hook to the body. And then, so the fight's done. I'm really good. I was good. At 16 to 18, I was really good, like, as an amateur. I felt I was unstoppable. And, but he kissed me. I won the fight, but my head went. He kissed me like that, right on the cheek. A real big story, like that. And my head went. There were people laughing in the crowd. My head went, and he went the distance. I won't say who bit me, but some guy bit me on the shoulder as a pro. And when I complained about it, we got it again. He bit me on the ear.
That's what it is, mate. People have to unsettle you. They can't let you get into the famous Barry Jones rhythm. Otherwise it's going to be all over.
Who grabbed my bum? I'd like to say it was Miguel Matthews, but I don't think it was. But it was someone like that. Or maybe Peter Buckley. I can't quite remember. I remember someone grabbed my bum. Like going close and they sort of span me round. And he sort of probably, because back then the gloves was pro. You could make,
you didn't have the thumb.
No, the thumb was attached to the glove. I'm not that old. But as an amateur, they weren't. Though I remember you get bruised thumbs more, you get swollen thumbs more than anything as an amateur. But the thumb was attached to the glove as a pro when I turned pro. But the gloves, you could open them up because everyone used the same gloves. Like I probably used the gloves from the 2 fights before. And you open these hands, every handful of bum.
This has taken a really weird turn.
I got a lovely bum. Like if anyone's interested, like it's a bum for hire at the minute.
I was going to say you can do anything for a bit of money at the minute. Coming up next, we're going to move away from talk of Barry Jones's derriere and discuss the shows coming up, starting with Josh Warrington, the now former IBF featherweight champion of the world, going up against Mauricio Lara on February the 13th.